Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Red Sea Down Under, and this is the debut show of the training ground. We're going to try this show out. We actually used to do it on the LFC Couch a little bit. We used to do it on the Periscope on Twitter, and a lot of our early followers and supporters of the show really liked it. We would release them as podcasts as well. But yeah, we thought we'd try and use this new technology that we've got. I've got with me Peter, as we used to call him, the coach, Kafinas. How you going, Pete? We haven't called you the coach in a long time.
Well, we've got to get clearance of that from the new boys at Red Sea and the Red Sea podcast. We've got to get their approval for it. So we'll ask them, and then we'll see if we can go back to that. But yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm happy because we got to watch Liverpool play again. I'm happy because I saw Van Dijk on the field again. I'm happy. Yeah. Like I said, it's something that, Joe Gomez, another one. It was just, just watching the Reds play is something that you can't beat. So yeah, I'm good.
It's funny because because we got the time wrong 3 times, didn't we? You said it's on Wednesday.
No, the date. I got the date wrong.
You said Wednesday, and then you said no, it's actually on Thursday. And so then I was waiting for Thursday morning, and then it's like, no, that's actually Friday morning. So we got the date wrong 3 times between the two of us.
Who has 2 60-minute matches anyway?
Well, that's the thing. You can't look at it when you've got a football app, because they weren't actual friendlies because the time was not 90 minutes. So they're not considered friendlies that you can put, because the apps don't know how to track a game that's not 90 minutes. So I couldn't check the time. I had to go to the Liverpool website and whatever. But that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. It's kind of a good segue into the idea behind the 30/60-minute matches. And I want to get your quick opinion on it before we dive into the technology that we've got, where we get to analyze these 2 mini friendly games between Liverpool and Bologna. I just wanted to chat to you about the 60-minute games, because I have a bit of a theory about why they're good. But why do you think Jurgen Klopp does the 60-minute matches? And you probably have the answer, because Jurgen Klopp has actually said it in interviews. But what, in your opinion, is good about having the 60-minute matches?
Well, the good thing about having 2 separate matches at 60 minutes of 100%, I think it's to get 100% intensity for 60 minutes instead of trying to manage a 90-minute match. So it's basically at 60 minutes we want you redlining. 60 minutes red line. Okay, not straight at the start, but within the first 10 minutes, once you're warm, your body's ready, the heart's pumping, the lungs have opened. Okay, let's see if we can get you redlining for the next remaining minutes. So every time there's a press, anytime there's a loose ball, anytime there's a ball played in behind, instead of like the 78th minute, you're like, I might just get there and I'll put enough pressure because I can't get there. It's no, even if you can't get there, it's a full red line sprint to get there, because we need you hitting these certain targets in the preseason match. We need you hitting X kilometers, X amount of full sprints, X amount of, whatever it is that Klopp and his team target. But I think the good thing about having 2 60-minute matches against a good opposition is to create that kind of intensity where they're running for long periods amount of time.
The other thing that I think, so this is one thing that Klopp said, was he goes, it allows us to have our training sessions. So like you just said, it's also in the game, the players they can't slack off, because literally the game is ended by the time they're thinking about not slacking off, but getting tired. But it's also, he mentioned technically, he goes, I now get to run them to the ground, and then they have a match where they don't lose all their energy. So that's the one thing that Klopp said, which is kind of similar to what you've just said then. But there's a third thing that I picked up, maybe, I don't know, this was my theory. And it's the fact that something that we've seen a lot with Liverpool is we play a 90-minute match, and we spend 85 of those minutes knocking on the door and playing, especially last season, quite slow football against teams who are happy to sit in. And that's kind of when we talked about we forgot how to counterattack, because we played such slow football against teams that they're sitting so far back. The thing that a 60-minute match does in preseason, to me, is it's maybe a form of training. Like I think Klopp talks about trying to create match situations in training, so that the players get used to thinking a certain way at a certain point of the match, so that their intensity raises. By running them to the ground during the week and then having a 60-minute match, it's kind of telling them, get the job done, try and in 60 minutes, try and beat them. You don't have that much time, so that maybe when they get to 90, they feel like, we're going to use this intensity, the same intensity as though time's running out. Meanwhile, they're up 3 or 4-0 and they're like, oh, this is pretty good. Like, this is a lot easier than the 60-minute match where we didn't have as much time.
And that makes sense because Rafa Benitez used to do something very similar in his training exercises, where he used to do this thing where he'd have two teams play each other. It could be 11v11, for example, let's say, and he'd have one team 2-0 up, and he'd tell the other team, you've got 25 minutes to come back and win 3-2, 4-2, whatever the score is. Otherwise, there's punishment. So, and that's where, going back to the Rafa days, if you remember, we were very difficult to beat, and we did, have famous comebacks as well as we had with Klopp, but we always never write us off kind of mentality. And I think that's what, going back to what you're saying, is something, again, very similar, where in their minds, we have to win this match and we only have 60 minutes to win it, whereas other teams have 90 minutes to win their matches at the moment in pre-season.
I want to remind everyone, if you want to find us on the Twitter, we are the Red Sea Down Under, so at Red Sea Down Under. You can see we're trialing a new icon up in the top right-hand corner. We're going to try and pass that through the authorities to see if we can have that new green and red kind of banner, that teal that we had on last year's jersey. But also, you can watch this. So if you're watching this on Twitter, please subscribe to the Red Sea Podcast. That's obviously who we're working with. We're just their Australian contingent, but you can subscribe to us on YouTube and watch us there. And then you get all the updates from all the shows there. That's definitely the best place to watch us. But now we're on to Liverpool versus Bologna. As we said, 60-minute matches. We won the first one 2-0. The second one we won 1-0. And something that Pete and I wanted to do was, and you're going to see the magic of technology now, you're going to see a board pop up, and look at the homework we've done, guys. Look at this. We've got LFC over in the left side, and we've got Bologna on the right side. We even got their badges, so you know who's who. And as the season progresses, we're going to put names and numbers on these people, but because friendlies, they change the whole squad, we didn't want to just sit there and keep changing names and numbers. But when we start the season, we'll have proper little mini jerseys on everyone, numbers, names, all that. So it'll be a lot easier to see. But we just wanted to run you through some things we noticed in the game. Before we get started on some of the tactical stuff, Pete, was there anyone that stood out for you in the first game? I think we'll start with game number 1. Also, phenomena that occurred between the two games, by the way. We can always talk about that. But specifically game number 1, any standouts from that starting lineup?
I mean, the standout for me is the obvious one that Van Dijk got to play and was spraying his characteristic long passes, and he looked a bit more comfortable in movement. I think that's hard to kind of explain, but he just looked more comfortable turning.
Well, he started the game
stuff. Yeah, and he started. Of course, he started. That's why for me.
He gets to start. He gets to start with the pace of the game, and then either grow with it or dictate it.
Well, that's what my favorite part of the first half was, seeing him. And my second favorite part was obviously Harvey Elliott, but I'm sure you want to mention Harvey, so I'll let that with you.
Yeah, well, about Virgil van Dijk, what was also good was his winning headers in our defensive area, and they're just even the commentators, good job. I think it's Neil Mellor that joined the main commentator for the game. It's always good to hear Neil Mellor commentate. Was it Neil Mellor?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, it was. I think they mentioned, like, you see that header that Van Dijk wins there. That's what we missed from him. But also, again, what we mentioned before, it's the presence. It's actually, we mentioned it on our Twitter, the presence in the opposite and on the opposite end of the field when we've got set pieces. I think it's
it's the communication. It's everything.
I think it's either a set piece, either a set piece or a corner, one of the two, either free kick or a corner, where he's at the back post and he's heading the ball back again. And he's just winning that header. It doesn't matter if nothing comes of it. We were non-existent at set pieces.
Isn't that how Oxlade scored against Hertha Berlin, right? It was Van Dijk heading a ball back into the area. So
absolutely, yeah. So it's obviously a standout to see him. Who starts with Van Dijk? It's Matip, isn't it?
Yeah, Matip.
It's also interesting to just talking about the centre backs again, just merging the two games together. I know I'm trying not to do that, but it's interesting to see Konate start at right centre back in the other game, and Gomez is like the VVD light. I don't know what that says about moving forward in the season. It looked like, especially if you're someone like Joe Gomez or even John Matip, you're kind of looking at it going, if I'm, maybe not so much Matip, but whoever's starting at left centre back is looking around them going, Well, obviously Van Dijk is going to be starting every game if he can. If I'm playing left centre back, it looks like I'm being groomed to be his, understudy. Whereas
Yeah.
Kanate is starting at right centre back in these games. So is there kind of something from Klopp going, I really do want Kanate playing right centre back, because Kanate is adept at playing left centre back.
Yeah, I just don't see Van Dijk starting the season though against Norwich.
Interesting.
I just don't think. I think it's too soon.
Yeah.
I definitely think he'll maybe start the second game, third game of the season. Then I think that's it for him. You'll just see him. I just don't think he'll start versus Norwich. I think you'll see it'll be a Matip Konate partnership to start that match.
But I do want to talk about Harvey Elliott in the first half. I think this was a game. It's interesting. He's probably had more explosive games for Liverpool, but I mentioned it to you off air. It felt like a Raheem Sterling performance when Sterling used to play at the tip of the diamond behind Suarez and Sturridge. It's just that thing that I used to see Sterling do. I just remember it when he was playing in the youth grades, and then when he came into the Liverpool side, I just didn't lose the ball. And that's kind of something I said to you. It feels like a 27-year-old kind of thing. So the way that Harvey Elliott played, which is so good, because this Liverpool team, when we're trying to replace Wijnaldum, think about the things he did well. We do need like an exciting, creative midfielder, but Elliott can do that. It's like we've talked about that with Curtis Jones. We were saying last season that he was almost trying to teach him how to be the mongrel kind of thing. Try and teach him how to be the hard ass in midfield. He doesn't need to learn how to do the creative stuff, because we know he can do that. With Elliott, the stock standard thing you just need to know how to do in this Klopp side is you need to position yourself well, and he is, and you don't lose the ball, and he's doing that, which is a really, really good sign, because when we're trying to replace not necessarily a ball playing midfielder, but just a midfielder who's safe and composed, Harvey Elliott is proving to be a player like that. If we think about some players that we have, even Oxlade-Chamberlain, for example, you think about him playing right centre mid in the second half. Chamberlain likes to move forward. He likes to try and find space, because he's kind of a winger by trade, but he's this kind of explosive box-to-box centre midfielder as well. He wants to tap the ball in front of him, take a shot, make something happen. Whereas with Elliott, he's like Lionel Messi playing in centre mid, or like Xherdan Shaqiri. He stops. He kind of... He looks at all of his options, and if someone comes at him, he can always, with his low center of gravity, just tap the ball out of harm's way. And the triangles he was making, and you're going to talk about that in one of the second or third segments of this when we're using our tactics board, about how he created those triangles with the center forward and Salah, and also with Trent, just in that area. Actually, maybe I can even if I can go on your board. Is your board available there? Can I see that there?
Yeah, let go of the mouse for a sec.
Yeah, I've let go.
Yeah.
Are we on now? With that, just this area there, if I can even make the circle, but you can see the mouse there going. That area here, if you think about, that's him here. That, just in here, was just, I love the way he was combining with people just in there. So another standout for me there. And I thought Diogo Jota was really, really good. A really fluid front three when he was playing. I think Mane loves Jota, because Mane can kind of drift in, and then Jota goes round the back, like to the far post, and kind of affords himself to win those headers. And then Mane is like, I can pick up scraps here. Just at a glance, those two players stood out for me, at least in the first game.
No, I agree with you. I agree with everything there. It's watching young Harvey go to work is kind of like watching, you're proud of your son, performing. It was good because we have this thing where we really want him to succeed, not because, he's young, whatever, but he's got this obvious love for us. And it's hard to find players who love us and want to be with us. I'm sure if we offered him a lifetime contract, I'm sure he'd take it. And you saw the way he spoke about us whilst he was at Blackburn, and with the justice for the 96, now 97 shirt underneath that he had when he had scored that goal. And I just think that I've got really high hopes for Harvey, and I really want him to succeed at the moment. So when watching a performance like that today, I thought it was great. But whilst we're on the...
Do you reckon, because we're on the topic of Harvey Elliott, do you want to talk about that little thing that you noticed happening, especially in that first game? Because we can talk about the left backs as well. Do you reckon is that a good idea, or should we?
I'll switch that now. Hold on. I'll just swap the thing around. So if you look at the thing now, so is that changed?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, Harvey Elliott's got the ball now.
So this is what we saw, not just from Harvey. We saw Curtis do it, but in this side of the field now, we saw Curtis do it here, and we saw Harvey do it there. But what we see a lot more of, remember, frustratingly enough, George, remember, whenever our midfielders would, get the ball from here, for example, let's say last season, the season before, we'd always look for an early ball in behind to try and get Salah, Mane, Jota, Firmino, someone just running in behind really early from basically in this area here.
Mm-hmm.
What I've noticed in this preseason, and in particular today, not just from Harvey, again, I said from Curtis, and there was Milner was giving it a go as well, was they'd actually carry the ball. And what they did was it asked questions of the defenders, really. And we saw actually Curtis get some success here, because when they're driving the ball and he has to commit, it then creates space for anyone else to make any kind of certain smart runs in behind or whatever it is, or even it doesn't have to be necessarily in this area of the pitch. If he's driving, and he ends up here with the ball, as we've seen with, it can even just be this one on the opposite side, because now everyone is looking at the midfielder carry the ball forward, and it's all eyes on the midfielder now.
That's an easy goal, that one as well. That run from Mane you've got there, that is an easy goal. I call it like a FIFA goal. Like it's just, through ball, and then Mane's on his right foot. Because how many times do we see like Salah get like straight on with the goalkeeper, or we've broken and Salah ends up on the left-hand side? If we can just be in this formation the way that, we are now, and a midfielder slots through one of our strikers on their favorite foot and they can just roll it, I don't think we've seen those goals enough, especially from the last season. We did during our championship-winning season, but not last year.
Well, what that run does, it occupies the two centre-backs. So these guys here are now all of a sudden forgetting what's happening around them. They're worrying about the danger, and the danger's right in front of them, because their job as centre-backs is to protect the goal. So as a midfielder is driving towards the goal and he's getting chased and pressured from the back, all of a sudden it starts to look a little bit crowded. Then these guys got to make a decision. Do I come? Mm-hmm. Do I stay? What do I do? And then all of a sudden now Salah or whoever's here, Firmino, Jota, whoever it is, doesn't really matter. Just got to make a movement, really, because if he peels out and asks for something and he potentially even follows, and it just creates again another open little, he can end up here. All of a sudden we've seen what Harvey Elliott can do when he shoots. Well, it's something just that we haven't done enough of in years gone by.
Well, we see Elliott, where your ball is right there, outside the box. We've seen Elliott there. We've seen him take a couple of first-time volleys. We've seen him in the first half, actually. He's made a lot of runs into the box. The other thing that I'll control with the pen now.
No worries.
I wonder what happens if I do this. If I do can I rub that? Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. So one thing that I also noticed is that if Harvey, and that's kind of what I was talking about before with Chamberlain, not necessarily that it's not the idea of carrying the ball, it's the style in which the ball's being carried. When Chamberlain is carrying the ball, like we said, it's quite like this, it's very lateral and it's fast, and we want to play fast. But and by the way, it's not a bad thing, because I actually liked Chamberlain in this right-hand side role, because he's naturally kind of like a right winger. He can actually cross the ball in. I won't even try doing that bendy arrow. Maybe you can do that bendy arrow later to show the flight of the ball. But like I said before, when Elliott's got the ball in here, everything is little taps, Messi style. I'm not calling him Lionel Messi, but when he does that, one thing I did notice is, does that player move? Yeah. One thing I noticed a lot was him. They all come in, it converges. Everything becomes quite, close together. When he gives the ball, he's given it to Salah. How many times did we see Elliott go here? And Salah's giving him the ball over to there. Hold on, if I can get the ball. How many times did we see Salah give Elliott the ball there? And a couple of times they didn't read each other quite right. But I think there's even a moment, if I'm not mistaken, if it's actually Elliott that makes this run, if I'm not mistaken, Salah actually does a little futsal fake back heel. I don't know if you remember that moment when Salah does a fake back heel here, and he actually it allows him to carry. Is that going to move? Yeah, it allowed him to carry the ball. So the run of Elliott that came over to here was actually a really good dummy run, and it took one of these defenders off with him. And look at all that space for Salah to run into. I don't know
funny
if
you mentioned that.
It, but go on. Yep.
No, I was saying it's funny you mentioned that because in my notes while I was watching the game, because I knew we were going to do a pod soon,
Yeah.
I actually identified not just were the midfielders carrying the ball a lot more and attacking kind of the back four to see which one moves and then how we can react to their movement. I also noticed that, as you literally just demonstrated, that our midfielders made a lot of third man runs.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next thing I was going to talk about, what also I saw that was definitely a tactical change, in my opinion, allowed also space for the third man run to continue. But 100% I agree with that, with those kind of runs, because I did see that as well.
The thing also, did you notice who else actually made some really good third man runs? Who, when he came on, forgotten man?
Which one?
Woodburn. He was.
Oh yeah,
he won the penalty.
Yeah. He won the penalty.
He did that correct, several times. If I'm not mistaken, I reckon if you go back and count all the fouls, I think Ben Woodburn probably won the most fouls. And do you know where he played the second half, the second game? Did you see where he was?
RCM, wasn't it?
In the second game, if I'm not mistaken, he was fullback. Very interesting.
Oh, was he?
I have a feeling he was fullback because Chamberlain continued as the RCM, and then Woodburn was on the field. So I think Williams makes way for him, Neco Williams. So, or was it Neco Williams that was playing right back? So it was interesting to see. Woodburn I thought he had a great game, but I think he did this job really well. What you're talking about, these third man runs and really enjoying the space that he was getting down the right. I reckon we'll go on to what our left backs were doing, something that you noticed, Pete. I'll throw that one to you. But our left backs were doing something, I don't know, do you call it something different or something augmented? I
call it maybe an extra layer to the structure of our fullbacks, because what I noticed in the first half with Robbo and with Tsimikas in the second half, who, by the way, player of the preseason so far, but that's for Monday's pod, show. But one thing I noticed, for example, here with the ball, we see Alexander-Arnold. We have Salah. So you see Salah, you see Mane. Here we have the RCM who would drop in and help, as Henderson does so well, just in case, and also cover the areas that potentially are exposed for attacks. And not just that, he's also there to recycle. So in case we have to change it or do something else or whatever it is, that's fine. We have our defensive midfielder, the opposite fullback, your Naby Keita. So, but here I noticed, this is what I want to talk about. I noticed when the ball was often on the other side. Remember, through bits and pieces of last year, you'd often see Robbo collecting a poor cross from Trent every now and then, and Mane would be in here, somewhere in there, whatever, right? And then that's what we'd look like. I noticed in particular in today's game more so, and I'm very curious to see if we do it in the next friendly game. So if you're listening and you're watching, pay attention to it to see if it's true. Our fullback kind of slotted into here, and our winger stayed wide instead of doing the whole roll-in action. Now, what that does for me with this width here, creates this guy to make sure he stays on him. And so what we're just speaking about with third man runs, it allows your midfielder to attack the space left with the width. And all of a sudden we have players entering, these areas here. Okay. Now, what I think this is for in this area here is to prevent counterattacks.
We need that as well.
You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And we need it.
You there?
Yeah, you can't hear me.
You there, George? Yeah. Yeah, now I can. Sorry. Yeah, so this is to prevent counterattacks. So I think, because often or not, how do we concede goals?
Counters.
Yeah, so I think now with this, instead of being completely exposed and having pretty much a triangle 3 defending everyone else, I think what this does is allow solidity at the back and prevent from counterattacks. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is that I noticed it because you noticed it happening with Robertson. I actually noticed that when you mentioned it, I noticed it with Tsimikas. And the thing is, he's more inclined to play that way. He feels like a little bit more, again, like the difference between Elliott and Chamberlain. And again, I'm not saying which one's better. I'm just saying the difference between the two. Tsimikas is more of a dribbler. Robertson, he will knock the ball and go past you. It's everything is and by the way, that's what we need, I think, from our fullbacks. And clearly, Robertson's the best fullback in the world in terms of left backs. So he's more suited to marauding up and down. Tsimikas, he likes to the futsal thing where you put your ball and with your studs and you roll the ball out and you cross like that. He kind of feels a little bit more close control, and when you are more close control, it feels like that you're a little bit more comfortable inverted the way that you're saying there with those fullbacks. I've noticed Tsimikas doing that already. And the fact that you've said that Robertson's now doing that, especially when the ball's on the other side, if we've got that problem with that counterattack, it's really interesting to see that we're doing that, because because like we were saying, Pep Guardiola seems to be changing systems, whereas Klopp is augmenting the current system to help us move forward and deal with some of the issues that people have exposed in the current system. It's like, buying like a weapon upgrade if you're playing COD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll be playing that later tonight, actually. But yeah. I'm curious. I'm just curious to see if what people think as well. And obviously, I think you mentioned it earlier. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But this show is obviously not live because behind us you see daylight. So, so with your questions, if you have any questions on what George or myself has shown or spoken about, wait for Monday night, because Monday night we do our live show where you can ask your questions like you did the last time, or just shoot us a question over Twitter or your thoughts over Twitter when we post this show.
There's one more thing that you mentioned with that you liked, and I wanted to ask you about that just before we wrap up here. Was it something that you noticed in both games? But you said something about our defensive midfielder. Just that you liked the shape of our midfield. You mentioned the first game. I'm not sure if it's something that you saw in the second game as well.
It was the same. Yeah. Just the single pivot, like where we see. If I go back to my little screen here. And where are we? Let's get that board back. Hey, George, what do you reckon? So just that shape there where we have the single pivot. Well, I'm a massive fan of a 4-3-3 with one holder. And I think with someone like Fabinho, who's the best in the world in that position, I think we're more than safe to have him do it on his own with Henderson and Thiago operating the other two. I think that's excellent, because we know what Thiago can do in advanced areas on the pitch. We know what Henderson's like as well with his work rate box to box in terms of covering Trent. That's like that's his thing. He's got Trent's back. So, but it's also like I think what that does is, going back to your point earlier with Harvey Elliott, is that when you've got two attacking midfielders or two advanced midfielders, if you want to call them that, they just get closer to the box. You know what I mean? So like at any moment now we can have Henderson there, we can have Thiago there, and at the same time we can have the width with our front three, because there's a player almost in every gap.
Whoops, was that me? I mean? That was me.
Yeah, that was you. So do you know what I mean? So like it's when you have that there, it just looks more balanced in attack. And obviously, we've got our fullbacks that do what they do 100%. Obviously, our fullbacks are the best in the world at what they do. And then if you wanted to replicate what our fullbacks would normally do, you'd have something looking similar to this. And then with our nice and high centre backs, as you mentioned before in a previous pod,
and Van Dijk is already we're at least a few feet or yards more forward with Van Dijk there. And you know what? Even with Konate there, it's just that extra pace that they have.
But even with Joe Gomez, I think we saw it today in the game. Joe Gomez's pace is still there. And he did one sprint where he got in front of the player, used his body really well, got in front of him, played it back to the keeper. Like, the pace of Joe Gomez is still there. We're quick to write him off because of his obviously injuries and stuff like that. But what this also does, this shape, before we, like you said, wrap it up, is when you're versing a team that obviously that we are going to play a million times this year, when they sit like that, it does give you a little bit more kind of substance with the team that sits in the block, because if you have a look in every kind of gap there's a player.
Mm-hmm.
And with people like Minamino, who are so intelligent in tight spaces, by the way, what a goal. We'll talk about that on Monday.
Yeah.
You know, with tight spaces and Firmino in tight spaces, Salah, Mane, you know, kind of Curtis Jones. It looks like Harvey Elliott can evolve to be something similar. When you've got these players who are really, really good in tight spaces, Thiago, another one, sorry, and you're committing that kind of block there that we can see with those kind of numbers and that kind of shape, maybe this could be the answer to breaking down these bus parkers, as we call them.
The last thing I want to show you is that there's something I noticed, especially, can you just go back to that screen? And just before we wrap up, I just want to have this one last thing that I noticed. I want to see if this actually happened, because it only happened once that I noticed. Because Elliott is making this run into here, how many times did Elliott have that weird volley that kind of happens there? I want to ask you if you saw, because especially if you've got a fullback coming in here, do you see Milner coming in here? Because Elliott is your RCM, which is Henderson's usually the one doing this work. But if Henderson's not playing there and it's now Elliott making these late runs, what I noticed is that Keita comes in and you kind of got an augmented 4-2-3-1 there. Even though it is a single pivot, like you're saying, you've kind of like the whole pitch has moved over to accommodate for this, you know, this free moving Harvey Elliott, who, by the way, kind of when he's got the ball at his feet can operate like a centre attacking midfielder, or the cam, as you FIFA fans love to call them. Does Milner come there? I can't remember if I saw Milner doing that.
You're right, and I did see Keita do that. So maybe it could be personnel.
Yeah.
It could be personnel. So we know that Henderson maybe isn't the best person at doing that, but Harvey Elliott is better at doing, you know, that, for example. Then maybe if it's Elliott, if it's Keita, if it's, you know, Chamberlain, for example, maybe their roles change versus Henderson versus Thiago.
Yeah. Maybe in a final 10 of the game, you set up like this in the final 10. I keep doing that. Go away. In the final 10 of the game, where you've got your three midfielders like this, if Elliott's on the field, what he does is he starts drifting into these areas, you know, in there, and then your two center midfielders kind of can afford to offer some protection against the counter attack, and then Elliott becomes your, you know, kind of like your free moving forward, and it's like an extra forward on the field.
No, like 100%. It could be a last 10 thing. It could be a last 20 thing, depending on the game. It could be depending who we're versing on the weekend, and that's the beauty of preseason and having the opportunity to have a 4-week training camp that we have with a full squad, by the way, for the first time in how long?
I know.
You know what I mean?
It's like a new signing. Do we need any signings?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, that's our new signing. Our new signing is a shape. We're trying this new shape out, and that's a new signing. So, and it's for free. So what else do we want?
And we got 2 million from Ings going elsewhere. Well, guys, let us know if you like the training ground. I mean, we're going to try and do these shows a lot more. We'll try and do them live if we can in the future, and then that may make the show a bit longer. But by doing it as a pre-recorded pod or live show, it allows us to kind of to do this a lot quicker and a lot more succinct. So let us know how you liked it. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube, Red Sea Podcast, and also to follow the Red Sea Podcast on Twitter, and also follow us, the Aussie contingent, the Red Sea Down Under, and that is at Red Sea Down Under. So yeah, let us know if you've enjoyed this. We're going to be back again for the Red Sea Down Under show, or just the Down Under show next Monday. We'll talk about all the friendlies that happened, not only today, this morning, but also over the weekend. So like always, have always loved talking to you. We enjoy talking about tactics and stuff. Pete, did you enjoy that?
I miss it. I miss the training ground.
And we're going to put our end credits photo. It's not going to have us. It's going to have our bosses on there. Not our bosses, but the guys who we've teamed up with. But we'll get our faces on there soon enough. So this has been George. That's been Pete. This has been the training ground. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you later, guys.